We've got a Range Rover here. Let's see what we've done to this one. Beautiful color. I love this color. Unfortunately, it's gained so much popularity. I fear that this is going to be a wore out color really soon. But I personally have always really enjoyed this almost a primer gray look, Arctic gray. I don't have the RO in front of me, but I am aware that this car had a little bit of damage right here. What happened was the hood was off kilter, and when it opened, it chipped both the hood and the door. So let's talk about what actually took place on this car, because right now, at a quick glance, you wouldn't be able to tell that we've ever worked or painted this car. So we were able to repair this little chip in the paint here and here, but for the door, although we're just repairing right here, for us to accomplish a good factory level paint job, we've now actually had to de-trim a lot of the door. Now, what does that look like and why do we need to do it? We're gonna need to take off all the exterior fittings so we can hide the edge of the paintwork, which includes this molding down here. It includes your door handle. Now, how do you think we get this part out of the car? This, when the car locks, sits flush, right? Well, we actually have to then start taking parts off the inside. So we have to take the interior trim off to gain access to get the door handle out. And that's all in effort to do a appropriate level of a paint job. And that same holds true for the hood. We're gonna need to take these moldings off. There's, as you can tell, a missing Range Rover badge. So we've taken that off as well, and we would take this off here. Now, that does not mean that we are repainting the entire part. The reason I say it that way is because a lot of people are thinking that we're gonna paint this color over the whole part. And that's not the case. The color is only going to go, go locally and then get feathered or blended into the original paintwork. So that paint match is nice, clean, and clear, and you're not able to see where our paintwork starts and stops. But the clear coat's the important part. When we're painting a panel, we need to put full clear coverage over that panel. So we would actually sand and scuff this entire hood and re-clear coat the entire hood. Now that's where the paint job gets its size of work. But yes, that color locally is just gonna be in that area. And it's pretty cool that had I not known that that's where the repair work was done, it would have taken me a while to find out that we've done anything there. That repair being as close to invisible as possible is what we strive for. I'm satisfied with this. I would, being critical, I'd give it a 9.5 or an A. I could nitpick anything though. I think we need to look at a little bit of making sure there's no dirt nibs or just perfect texture. But there's gonna be nothing residual that the customer needs to worry about on this. And that's why it's important to go as thorough as we do. We have no fear of the paint failing and peeling off or cracking or flaking. I've got no fear that in a couple years, you're gonna be able to see where we start and stop our paint line. I'm not gonna have any fear that any of the areas that if we would have taped something off, that clear coat's gonna lift, because we didn't do any taping off of any moldings that are on the car. So that's the beauty of doing things this thorough and following procedures. We're able to return the customer to a vehicle that they don't have to worry about deteriorating over time. Hey guys, let's see what we have in the shop today. This is a vandalism claim. Somebody tried to break into it. Cool part here that's a little unique. These cars have laminated door glasses, so it's gonna be really similar to like your windshield. Where it's two pieces of glass that have laminate between them. And that's why these door glasses have chips and cracks, but didn't actually shatter out. So the reason I think this is kind of cool, this prevented somebody from breaking into this vehicle. Looks like they hit it with a hammer or a tool and they tried to pry open. And ultimately this guy's car was safe. At least the items inside the car were safe. The car's here for some door glass replacements. But that prevented somebody from being able to break in and car hop his car. This one back here is a little more traditional for what we're used to seeing. This has been involved in an accident. We did just have some snow, so I'm gonna assume that this likely was some level of a slide off where they suffered what's the word I'm looking for? The unfavorable situation from snow. And it looks like it's gone down the whole side of the car. So this at surface level may not look that bad. And really it's not. Like there isn't what I would consider really severe damage, but let's start talking about the full scope of it and how stuff like collision repair can add up, and it can be a pretty tall bill when you start looking and adding things together. We have a lot relatively severely damaged parts, right? They're severe enough that they're damaged beyond repair. You've got damage to a headlight, a bunch of plastic that's broken out, the bumper, your fender's pretty destroyed. These are all gonna need replacement. The wheel. Now the scratches and dents that come through the door aren't terribly bad, and then it gets a little bit worse as we get to the back again. Now a vehicle like Subaru, their parts aren't inherently really expensive, but neither is the car, right? So the reason I bring all of this up is as we start to just throw some numbers at some of these parts. If the bumper itself, just the part price is like 400 bucks, the headlights 500 bucks, fenders 400 to 500 bucks. Those are just 3 known replacement parts, and we're already above most people's deductible, right? It's gonna be over 1,000 bucks. As we start getting into the quarter panel, maybe let's say it's $1,000 quarter panel, and then we've got a door that's crushed pretty good here right on the edge. Got onto the inside of that door as well, not just the outside, but it's already started to compromise the inside of the door. You know, let's say it's $1,000 door. So we're already climbing up to a few grand. Now let's look at the steps in the process the car needs to go through. So anything that we're fixing or painting, we're gonna need full clear coat coverage of that part. What I mean by that is let's talk about the repair. If we can fix this door, and there's gonna be work throughout this area, when we do our paint work, we're gonna paint locally, and we're gonna try to blend into the original factory color. But when we do our clear coat, we need to have full coverage of the panel. We need one full continuous clear coat coverage. And what we're gonna try to accomplish is hiding the edge of the clear coat under a static part to where it's never exposed to UV or weather or wear and tear. So what I mean by that is like underneath one of these moldings, underneath the bottom of this mirror. So we have to take everything on the outside off. Typically, to take things on the outside off, we're gonna have to take the interior trim panels off to gain access for the paint and the repair. So now that we've got that concept in mind, we've got a bumper, a fender that need replaced, a door that needs taken apart for repairs, and then a full paint job. Same thing for the back door, same thing now for the quarter. Now, just talking about the paint on the quarter, this is where the paint work starts to get a little larger. So understanding that we have to have one continuous clear coat coverage, this quarter panel goes all the way up into the roof rail. Another thing a lot of people don't think about is that this also continues into your door jambs. So as we take a look here, this quarter panel goes all the way through, and the paint work will stop underneath this molding. Now we've got quite a bit more to take off on the car just for the access to do the job. So I know I started doing body shop rambling right there, and I probably used a lot of industry terms and I was speaking quick, but as we step back and look at the scope of that work that needs to be done again, we've got a lot of work to actually do. This is where we're gonna start to hold some concern and start talking to an insurance company about, you know, what are they gonna be willing to spend on the repair before they start thinking the car could be a total loss. Now, total loss, buzzword, all the cars total. If you fix it the right way, it's just gonna total, right? There's a lot of, unfortunately, negative commentary that goes around that idea. Total loss decisions are made by the insurance company. It's gonna be made by the person who's actually paying the bill. And I think a large misconception about total loss, there's a lot of misconceptions about total loss, but ultimately it's just when a price point of the repair exceeds what the bill payer is willing to spend. A lot of states are gonna have statutes or guidance around it has to be 75% of the vehicle's value, or there's gonna be some determined threshold. Ultimately, the insurance companies are financial companies, right? It needs to make financial sense to them to fix the car. If it is going to effectively cost less or cost them less to replace the vehicle and buy the vehicle from the customer, that's when they start thinking in their heads, what's a total loss? Total loss is not always about the severity of an accident. Again, as we first started looking at this car and we started reviewing it, you may not think this is a total loss. It's a newer car, it's not wasted, it didn't get rear-ended by a semi, it didn't roll down a hill, it didn't catch on fire. But when we start adding up all of the parts of the repair process, the paint process, the replacement parts, the bill can climb pretty quickly, right? So I hope that was informative a little bit about what the total loss process might look like. And from a body shop perspective, why we would look at something like this and already have at least one flag that's being waved that says this could potentially be a total loss. The other side of the car is pretty clean. Let's go through the rest of the shop, see what we've got. You got to remember, on Fridays with 4-day work weeks, we don't have a lot of guys to interact with today. We actually started this through COVID when we were reducing some overhead. We had transitioned a lot of the employees to part-time instead of letting people go or furlough. So when we reduced that time, as everybody came out of the coattails of COVID and we got busier again, we started to add days or add hours back to the staff. And what we found is we got to 4 days and we were working 10-hour days even before that. It was just 5 10s, right? But when we returned to 4 days, we liked it and we kind of stuck with it. And we were still able to get people 40 hours a week. It provided a lot of, that one extra day is reset time, right? So we found a lot of positive feedback from the staff, myself included. I enjoy 3-day weekends. So we just never went back to 5 days. We've tailored the shop to have 2 primary shifts. So what I mean by that is a good portion of the employees are going to work Monday through Thursday, 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. with a 1-hour lunch. The remainder of the staff, and it's about 20 to 25% of the staff, actually works Tuesday through Friday. That means everybody gets a 3-day weekend. The Monday staff is going to cover anything that was left over from the Friday staff, and then of course the Friday staff is covering what's left over Thursday evening. But the mental clarity that's provided to a lot of people, myself included, is huge. We're still open to the public 5 days a week, so it's really not even a hiccup in the overall business operation. But that's why a vast majority of our staff isn't here on Friday. We've probably got 20 to 25% of the staff here. Let's see what we've got over in our mechanical area. Normally there's something fun going on if it's over in the mechanics bay. I'm not sure what this one's got going on. Maybe just a battery charge? Well, let's unpack this one a little bit. So this one's probably back for, as you can see, it's still damaged. We haven't really started any of our work on it. Something that you may not think about, but makes logical sense, is after a vehicle's been involved in an accident, it's typically going to call for some kind of an inspection. Now, looking at this car, we see that the bumper's damaged, the fender's damaged, and it slightly comes back into the door. Well, where's all this damage located at? It's right here in the right front wheel. With that, and it's being a Lexus, we're gonna be looking for what Lexus calls for what you may hear as a post-collision inspection or a safety inspection. And that comes in a lot of different forms. That could be checking seatbelts, that could be doing an alignment check, that could be going as far to check some of the airbag system, even though the airbag system didn't deploy. Lexus does a pretty good job, and a lot of other brands do as well, at wanting these shops to check some boxes and do some visual inspections on the safety systems of your vehicle. Now, again, even though that there are no bags blown or seat belts that are locked up, if Lexus says we need to check the locking mechanism, if it says we need to check the airbag connectors, if it says we need to check some of the wiring, that's what we need to do, right? These guys spend a lot of money crash testing cars and having engineers write the repair plans and go over what it takes to fix the car the right way. And some of the potential things that may have a partial deployment, it's not always visible on a warning code on the dash, right? That's another pretty common misconception, is that, well, if there was a problem, it would have a warning on the dash, right? Well, that's not always the case. And we'll take a look at this car real quick and see if there's even a warning light on the dash. There very well may not be. That's where it's up to us to check if there is a physical problem, and it may come in the form of stress, like stress marks in the plastic, or burnt connectors, or different ohms and resistance is a way that we can check some of the electrical. Lexus pretty much calls out that you need to do a pretty thorough physical check, again, of the seatbelt, the functionality. Some of them call for like a test drive. So let's take a look here really quick, get this out of our way, but I don't have any warning lights currently showing on the dash. And that doesn't necessarily shock me. Think about all the electronics that are in vehicles nowadays. Sure, you might say, Josh, well, that means that there should be a warning for anything that's wrong with the car. Imagine the size of your dash would need to be if it had a warning light for every single electrical component in your car. Now it's gonna have the majors, right? If there's something wrong with the coolant, there's something that's gonna be detrimental to the engine or the performance or your safety, those are the primary things that are gonna trigger a warning light. But there's just so much built into cars that there's not a designated indicator light for absolutely everything that could be wrong with the car. That's where us hooking up and doing pre-scans, effectively that's the electronics health check of the car. That's why it's so valuable, because that might have some hidden problems that aren't actually apparent on that dash. Now these, with the recent snow we've had, we may have some cars back here that are getting cleaned up or pre-washed. A lot of salt, a lot of nasty stuff on the road, so the cars are coming in pretty dirty. The obvious reason is we want a clean slate to work with as we're going over the damage with the customer at the day of drop-off, right? So let's think through that. If you show up and you've got salt and debris and grime all over your car, what if we miss a small scratch, or what if we miss a small dent? We don't want to have that opportunity for failure that early in the process. So that's the first reason why. Another big reason why, and I think this is often overlooked, you want to keep dirt, trash, debris, chemicals out of your paint shop, because that can jeopardize the quality of your paint jobs, right? So we want to wash and clean the vehicle to try and remove as many contaminants as possible before it ever enters the shop, so we can keep our paint shop as clean as possible. Let's see. Not super excited about that car, so we'll trim that one out. So we have a new drop off here. So first time laying eyes on this one. Looks like they took a little bit of hit in their quarter panel, which is relatively obvious given the distortion and the paint missing. We've got a little bit of surface rust, which could mean a couple things. It could mean that this accident happened a little while ago, or it could just mean that they live in Indiana and we've got tons of salt on the roads right now. But as we're kind of looking through, take a look at all this, right? So we see that exterior, but as we get into the door jamb here, see some of that flecking paint. All this is kind of pushed in a little bit. So we've got our work cut out for us on this one. It may need a replacement. We'll see. I want to get a little bit more taken off the car and get a little more access before we really lock that in. Although this is shoved in pretty far, the more I'm looking at it. As you kind of look down here, that lip, yeah, I mean, we're already pretty safe to say that this is going to look like it's a quarter replacement. The door, another one that's likely to replace for a couple reasons. Number one, that's shoved in pretty good. It's not that it's not repairable, but you got to think about how much work you're putting into that metal and what's the quality of that repair going to look like long term. We've also got some distortion here on the inside of the door, but one of the biggest things that I'm going to be looking for is where is the impact beam in this door. So fun fact, a lot of these doors have structural safety beams in them, and that is put in there so if you get T-boned or if you get hit really hard in the side, that's that true brace that keeps the people inside safe, right? And those are traditionally welded in either horizontally or diagonally, but when those are hit, those are not an item that you are able to repair or restore its integrity. So when those impact beams suffer an impact, it does require a replacement door. And if we replace that door, we'll need to blend the paint into the front. One of the fun facts with paint, blending can be like a really uneasy term for people to hear because that insinuates that the paint's not going to match. And in fact, it's the opposite. The idea of blending is so that the paint that we've put on the car blends into the factory paint job. We can match the paint. We've got all kinds of fun technology like cameras, and we can look up the color mix from the OE, but so many variables go into how a paint job actually lays onto the car, whether that's the factory that it was sprayed in, the humidity, temperature, and how does the metal flake land as it comes out of the gun and hits the car. I'm confident we could get this color match really good, but that texture of the metallic flake, you'd be able to see if we stopped our paint at this hard line, man, it's gonna look two totally different tones when you get it out in different light settings. That's where we're gonna take this and do a bit of a gradient layer from our paint and then gradient it into the original paint. So it blends our paint into the factory paint, and you can't see that hard line where our paintwork stops and the original paintwork begins. Our aluminum room or specialty repair area, as you can see, we've got all kinds of fancy bright equipment, curtains, which some people may not be familiar with. this is where we're going to work on some of our larger jobs on more critical style vehicles or critical OEM certifications. What I mean by critical is that there's going to be different environments and situations that they want us to set up. Aluminum has an issue with cross-contamination with other styles of metal and can create some corrosion or can create some issues with how that metal reacts. So we've got these areas we can curtain off and keep this room as clean as we possibly can, but they've got the term aluminum clean room, so we can prevent some of that cross metal contamination. So you're gonna see a lot of vehicles back here that are on a higher line or a higher scale. So your Audis, your Rivians, your Porsches, your Jag and Rovers, and that's why we have different styles of curtains and different areas for curtains, right? Those guys all have different nuances where they may want a red curtain that's a certain height, or this one here where it's like green in the center and cut off at the bottom and a little bit taller, certain lights and lumen levels and lumen readings for the area. So this is where all the cool stuff goes down, if you ask me. We have a Mustang Mach-E, so from the Ford family. Let's see what it looks like. We're still working on a disassembly on this one. It doesn't look like it's quite done, but we're getting close. So right now we've got a front bumper, grille, passenger's headlight, fender, both the doors off the car, and it looks like we've started to take the interior out and headliner, some of the quarter interior trim. While I don't have the RO immediately in front of me, and I am not familiar with the check-in of this car, it looks like something went down the side of the vehicle. The reason I say that, without even seeing the parts of the repair order, is we've got some damage here on the A-pillar or inside the door jamb. So you can kind of see right here where something's gotten a hold of this and pushed it in a little bit. And we see a little bit back here as well. Looks like maybe a door came down onto it. So we need to continue getting the interior out, getting it bagged up. That way it stays as dust-free as possible and getting it prepared for the work to get started. So right now this vehicle is technically still in like an assessment phase. It likely came in with some kind of a pre-approved insurance estimate, and we've gotten the disassembly started so we can do an assessment of the full scope of the repairs. Again, full scope of repairs doesn't just mean what's got dents and scratches to it. We need to look through and see what inspections the car needs, what kind of paint work that it calls for, and then of course the obvious of parts needing repaired or replaced that are dented or scratched. Cleanliness is important for a lot of things. I mean, I think efficiency and knowing where things are located is super important, especially when you have jobs that, well, let's take a look at one of our parts carts that could have, 25, 50, or 100 things off the car. If you're not organized and clean, it's very easy to lose sight or lose parts. It's really important for the quality of the work that we do as well. Thinking about keeping your paint shop clean, you've got to start with a clean car. You've got to start with clean parts, or that dirt and those problems will live with the car as it runs through your process. And I know we're unique with the size of shop that we have, but I would encourage that every shop can find new efficiencies with organization and cleanliness. I also think about, what does the customer expect their vehicle to be, how do they expect their vehicle to be cared for? And I can tell you that if I was an unknowing customer, like all of them are, most people don't get in more than one accident every 7 to 10 years, right? And I came in and I saw that my interior was super dirty and there's dust everywhere. I'm sure you've all seen what drywall work looks like, right? Super dirty work. And you want the stuff in your home to be protected and covered up and clean. We have to take that same approach, right? I know these are all parts getting replaced. And if you notice that there's no parts on here that are just removed and ready to reinstall, so like good parts that we had to take off for access, and that's because we put them in totes like this. So all the good parts from your car are gonna hang out in a tote like this. And it's not just to protect them from damage, but it's to protect them from dirt and debris and metal shavings and all the fun stuff that we do get exposed to out here. I don't want that to live in your car forever. I don't want to expose trim panels and other parts to all of that work. If we can just put it in a tote, take great care of it, and make sure that that's keeping a cleaner work product for you and for us. With cleaner work, there's less opportunity for error. It always really sucks when you have a car that's getting painted and it comes out of the paint booth and you have to repaint it because there's dirt and debris and junk in the paint. So there's limitless reasons as to why having a clean shop and a clean work environment are really important. Let's go have a look together. So we're walking up here on a Volkswagen Tiguan. Looks like it's got a left tail light out, right tail light out. Oh, ooh. We got some quarter work to be done. So let's have a look at this car. It also looks like it suffered a side swipe to some degree. While I don't see the fender, I'm sure it's living around here somewhere very close, but we've got damage in the front door. And as you can see highlighted in our yellow paint pen, this is what the customer has claimed as part of the claim, part of the accident. And it gets a little worse as we continue to go down the vehicle to where we also get to our quarter panel right here, which certainly needs some love. Lot of distortion, paint missing down here, cracked paint. So thinking out loud here, I haven't pulled the procedures personally on this car yet, but some of the things that I'm gonna be looking for are, what are the tolerances or allowances when it comes to deciding whether or not we can fix this panel? One of the biggest things that we need to be aware of is if the vehicle is put on with structural glue, or if it's glued together, where's that glue located and has that glue been compromised? One of the things that we always have to be mindful of is if two panels are glued together, right? And this is how structural glue works. Imagine we've got these two panels and one's lipped over the other and these two are glued. Now, let's assume that that's this right here. If this is dented, we can fix metal. That's what our guys do for a living. They fix damage on cars. But let's think about that glue. If that glue is broken inside, because it's a very, very strong glue and when it's dried, it can crack and break. When I fix all of this, I can make the metal look fine. Now let's talk about the structural glue. If that glue is broken because it was damaged, how do I now get this panel off and put new glue on it to glue it back together? Well, that's where this quarter might need replacement, right? Because if we were to remove this panel, it's gonna suffer some pretty good damage while we're cutting it off or taking it off the car. And we won't be able to restore that glue. That's kind of where I'm getting at with this is, if we had those two pieces together, they get crinkled up, I straighten them, the glue is still broken in between the two. And the way that we restore that is by putting a new quarter panel on. That's how we would gain access to put the glue bond back together. So you might be thinking, well, it's not that big of a deal. What if the glue is only broken from here to here? Why don't you just fix it? The car will be fine, right? Well, let's think about the bad things that can happen there. This is a structural component of the car, right? It is static, it is part of the body, it does not move, it's not a bolt-on. This is either welded, glued, or bonded to the car. So anytime your car is going over terrain, whether that's potholes, speed bumps, or just out driving, it's gonna have some pressure and some flex that's happening on the car. Well, if that structure glue is only broken from here to here and it's good throughout, when that car flexes, this is gonna be a weak point, right? So you could have like a body squeak where you hear that metal rub together or the glue rubbing off. And we live in Indiana and other states have this same problem, but we get snow, which means we put salt and chemicals on our road. So this is gonna be right in a danger zone for the most exposure to salt and chemicals because it's gonna come right off the tire and go right here and sit there. So you're at a high risk of corrosion too, right? Not to mention, you know, the structural glues are put together and the rivets and the bonding methods that they use for vehicles are all with safety in mind and to dissipate inertia and energy as a car is hit. So if you do have a weak point, if this car was in another collision, who knows if it's going to react the same, right? So it may not disperse the energy in the way that it was originally designed to do. So yeah, there's all these, it's not about the cosmetic look at the end. We could make this look perfectly fine and you would never know until there was a problem, right? But that's one of those moments of doing it the right way so your investment is safe and you are safe. A lot of people don't think of the what ifs, what could go wrong, based on the scope of repair that you do on a car. Some of the level of paint work we need to do is we will paint the color locally, but we will apply a full panel clear coat. Now, what do I mean again by that? I'm gonna put the clear coat under the edge of the clear coat underneath a static part that will never be taken back off the car, so it's never exposed to weather or wear and tear or use. So let's look at this quarter though, and this is always fun to go over with people. This quarter panel actually goes all the way through and up towards the windshield, where this is where we'll stop, just like they did at the factory, or it's hidden underneath the fender. But Let's go around to the other side of the car because I have something fun to show you on this one. And we see this a lot on German vehicles or newer style vehicles. So that quarter panel also goes into the door jamb. So our clear coat actually needs to continue, and underneath this molding is where the clear coat would stop. But we've got another fun little fact on this car, right? Understanding the concept of the clear coat coverage, let's look at this roof. So as we go up the quarter panel, the roof does not have what we would call like a breaking point. Sure, I can hide the clear coat line under this roof rail, but what do we do about this? This is where we're going to get into an environment where we're doing what's called an up and over or a saddle blend, where the clear coat's actually going to extend because of the quarter panel over here. We're going to extend that clear coat down the roof rail, through the door jambs, through this uniside, but also across the roof and down the other side of the car. That's where we're going to achieve that one full continuous clear coat coverage that all the paint manufacturers and a lot of the OEs actually indicate are a requirement to do the job the right way. This is going to prevent the clear coat from peeling or flaking later in life. I'm sure we've all seen that car going down the road and you see that there's a big dull spot like in this roof rail right here. And that's typically because somebody at some point in that vehicle's life had done a partial paint job or tried to blend the new clear coat into a factory clear coat, and it ultimately failed. Morning, Bird. Morning, Tim.
What's up?
Got any cool cars over here? We got any cool stories? This is a pretty cool looking car. It's a new Rover. What do we have going on with this one? We got a free tool on the ground over here. We have a Range Rover. And what I read was what we call like the facts of loss. We asked the customer what happened in the accident, and we try to leave some of those notes on the windshield so it lives with the car, and anybody who is helping diagnose or helping repair this car, they can quickly look and see what's happened to the car and why it's actually here. Looks like we've got a relatively small deal here, and it's just some scratches right through here and some scuffs through here, but we've not done a good job here. And the reason I say that is that this car, and it looks like we did a good job at the check-in, but we've had a lot of snow lately, so the car needs re-cleaned before we do our assessment. It does look like the estimator originally cleaned it because his paint pen has the watermarks over top of it. There could be so much more than meets the eye behind a bumper like this. There's all kind of fun complexities, blind spot monitors, park sensors, rear traffic cross alerts, all kinds of fun stuff in the rear end of these cars. So although it's a small scratch, it may tell a different story once we take it apart. Even if we are to repair and paint this, we first need to take the bumper off the car and de-trim and take everything out of the bumper. Now, right here, it looks like it's just this big plastic piece, right? But it's a little bit more than that. As we look, we take this bumper off. It's also got park sensors that are pretty well hidden. So we need to take all of those out. We'll need to take these, which are normally like a turn signal or a reflector light. We do have some additional reflectors as we come around the other side. See this here. This may be a multiple piece bumper or spoiler. As you can see the color difference between here and here, so we may need to separate these if that's possible. And then we need to start looking at what's still on the car, right? Did any of that plastic flex inwards and maybe break some of the brackets? Or did the plastic flex far enough that now it's damaged and broke other parts? Keeping in mind that this is a plastic part, it's flexible. So when it was hit, it can be shoved in, break other things inside, and then pop back out. So there may be more hidden underneath this that's broke that we just don't see today. But yeah, even just for a repair and repaint of the bumper, we've got our work cut out for us with the disassembly that needs to happen. There's a lot of components that actually live in the bumper. We'll need to look into the blind spot monitors, the parking sensors, potentially if there is any kind of a rear cross traffic alert, where's that located in the car, and does it need tested? So yeah, quite a bit just from a little bumper scratch. Let's have a look. So this is an Audi SUV. Looks like it's a Q5 or Q7. It's the larger model. And it looks like this one's still in disassembly. Looks like we've still got some work to do. This is the Q7. So as I'm approaching the car, sight unseen to me, as I look at a few things, our estimator's done a pretty good job at leaving some of the breadcrumb trail for the story here. We're looking at pre-alignment, which has been marked to be done. Now, a lot of your German brands are gonna actually call for an alignment check after a car's been in any kind of a collision. So this is our indicator that that's not only documented, but it's been completed. Some seatbelt inspections. and there is a ceramic coating note. So the customer probably talked to us at the beginning and let us know that he had ceramic coat put on the vehicle. We're gonna move to the front of the vehicle and I'm gonna check the dash and some of the other notes on the vehicle to see what actually happened to the car. Point of impact was a rear end claim, so they got rear-ended. Let's look at the bumper in the tailgate. So I don't see anything wrong with the tailgate, which very well may be the case. Being an SUV, right, if they were hit by a smaller vehicle, it may have stayed below the lift gate and only into the bumper. But let's take a look at some of this. So you're gonna see that we've got electrical connectors taped up. You might be thinking, why do we do that? The work we do is relatively dirty, and body shops get dusty and have dirt and debris and metal shavings that fly all over the place. We're trying to keep those connectors clean while they're exposed. We don't need dust, dirt, trash, metal shavings getting into those connectors and maybe causing a problem for your car later in life. So for that, anytime we have an electrical connector disconnected, we're gonna tape up those ends and keep that nice and clean, just the same as it was when we took it apart. Let's look for the bumper of this car. This is kind of cool, we'll talk about this. So here's our Audi 61467. This is the matching RO. Now we've got some parts here in this tote. You might be asking, well, what are you doing? Why are they in the tote? These are parts that are off the car and they needed to be taken off for some level of access to the repair work, and they're good. These don't need repaired, they don't need replaced. So you'll see that we've got these in bubble wrap here, and these are some of the reflector backup lights that are in the bumper. This is just an extra layer of protection so that while this part is being stored, it's not gonna get scratched, it's not gonna get cracked, it's not gonna get damaged while it's hanging out off the car. This is also one centralized place where all of the car, or all the parts for this specific car are gonna live exclusively. We don't mix these together. This is just for this car while it's here with us. This is gonna put a lid on it, of course, and then stored behind us, as you can see, in a very safe and much cleaner way to store the parts that are good off the car. These are the parts that either need replaced or need repaired that are off that Audi that we were just having a look at. So, a lot of the small stuff here, you can see we've got some labeling. So it's the sensor, left middle, left inner trim. Now, why is that important and why am I kind of getting excited that we followed this? If I were to take this park sensor out of the bag and ask you, out of the 4 park sensors that this goes into the back of a bumper, which one is it? Because it does have a designated area for it. There's gonna be a left side, and there's 2 for each left side. There's an inner and an outer. And then same for the right, there's an inner and an outer. That's why it's so important that we take a little bit of extra time at the front of this and be meticulous and be thorough and put labels for things like this. You know, what if the tech who took this apart, what if he's sick or he's on vacation when this gets ready to build? This is a much nicer way to leave it for the next guy to pick up the pieces and put it together for you and be able to do a good job, right? We've also got some electronics or modules or monitors here. This one here is a corner blind spot monitor. In this, although there may not be damage that's obvious or apparent here, a lot of these electronics are going to require replacement if they've been exposed to an impact. Now, why is that a thing, right? If these are dropped or get hit, we may not know that there's outside or exterior physical damage, but the internals of these electronics could be compromised. A lot of your OEMs are even gonna have on the box, like let's say we order the new one and the box comes in, it will say that if this package has suffered a drop, to not use the part. So they're that critical about their functionality. And when you think about what they do, you know, whether it's radar, LiDAR, sonar, all these sensors and these developments, they are very sensitive, and that's their entire purpose of being on the car, is that they can send out some level of a wave and be very critical and very accurate as to what they're detecting. So yeah, if this thing was just potentially hit or it was in the direct line of impact, that's where this is going to call for a replacement. Then there's obvious damage, right, where you see like an absorber that's cracked completely through. Some of the moldings obviously did not survive the rear end here. Let's see what we got here. Obviously needing a replacement there. And this rear bumper looks like it got chewed up pretty good. As you can see here, So you can kind of see appears to be relatively central located where the impact happened, which aligns with the notes the estimator left on the windshield, right? And we can see the trailer hitch right here, where it's taken a little bit a bite out of the car that hit him. Now this adds another layer of importance, right? Trailer hitches like this are bolted into the body of the car. A lot of them are going to be bolted directly to a frame. So with that, we are going to set up and measure the frame as well, just to make sure there's no imperfections and nothing's out of alignment when it comes to the frame or the rear body. Well, this is actually a pretty good example. Sorry, we're going to pick on you here for a second. Especially with a car that's going to be a silver or any color that's going to hide some of the scratches or the imperfections. When we have all this junk on it, like the salt spray and the dried up water spots, it just makes it that much harder to see all the scope of the damage. It makes it a lot easier for us to make a mistake early on, right? So if there's a small imperfection, a small scratch, a small dent, it's a lot easier to overlook those small details if it's covered up by some dirt. Yep. Here's how we do it somewhat right. Quarter panel looks like after you take it off. I was saying some of those other body shops must just be built different and they're better than us. If they can put that back on after it's been peeled off, we must be doing something wrong. This is a quarter panel that's been taken off a car, and this kind of ties into some of the things we've talked about in prior videos, especially when we're thinking through like replacing structural glue. Now this one's not the best candidate because we don't have glue here, but there would typically be glue here. What you see here is we've ground out welds to get this off the car. So when you think about that, when we're being asked to put a panel back on or restore the joint on a panel, which takes peeling it back and then putting it back on, this is kind of the condition you're gonna see that metal in after it's been removed. Now, look at all these holes. It looks like Swiss cheese, right? And that's because we ground out the factory welds, but then that leaves us with very little material to really weld it back on. And actually, here we go. Here's some of that glue I was talking about. So see how we've had to trim off the edge right here? That's because normally, this is not it, but there's a lapped piece over. So if your structure glue is broken just from here to here, this is kind of the condition it's going to look like when we go to remove that to put the new glue in or restore that glue. That's where this becomes a task that just can't be completed, right? It's not realistic, but we are often asked to complete a task like that. Sometimes your insurance company wants us to repair this, but they are so wrong. I'm trying not to expose myself to a slice. So looking at this from the outside, we've had some videos talking about the structure glue, right? So this quarter panel has been removed, obviously, but as we look to the inside here, this car had structural glue that runs along that wheelhouse. Now, when I've talked previously about when that structure glue is broken, how do you restore it? Well, this is what a removed quarter panel looks like. I don't think that's going to go back on very easy if we try to peel that off and put new structure glue behind it. But hey, that's just me. We have a Volvo that looks like it took a smack in the driver's quarter panel here. So a couple things I'm looking at. This at first glance does look repairable. I'm questioning what the access we have on the inside of the panel looks like. I'm also questioning through, you know, where, if any, structure glue is holding this panel together. Couple cool things I see though too. Even though this is a quarter panel hit, we're probably going to have to do some level of electronics diagnosis or calibrations at the very end. And you're probably thinking, Josh, why? What electronic components are in the quarter panel? Well, it's not just about this here, but look what's right next to it. So we have a blind spot monitor, which is housed in the left rear and the right rear of the car. And that's right here in very close proximity to where that quarter panel was hit. We're likely going to have to disconnect that for the work that we're doing. And as a result, we may need to do some calibrations and function testing of those systems. We are also going to have to probably do some decent paint work here. As we look here, yeah, that dent, let's assume we're going to repair it today. But that dent, you know, is going to be in this area for where we fix. But when we do that full clear coat coverage, keep up with me here, but that clear coat's going to have to go all the way through and up to the front of this, what I call a roof rail. Additionally, and why we've got some of the doors and everything else disassembled, we've got to take the clear coat down and into the door jambs. And that clear coat's actually going to stop right here where that weather strip's going to go back on. So we've got a pretty decent job that we're looking at right here. We will take these doors actually off the car as well. Let's think through something. A painter paints with a paint gun, right? And he has to spray clear coat out of that gun. It's going to be really challenging to get that gun here on this pillar and spray clear coat with the door on it. Now I know some shops may elect to not do something like this, but just an effort, an essence of quality and doing things for a good quality paint job, or what I would consider that, we're gonna get these doors off the vehicle so we have, our painter has full access to do clear coat in those pillars. Oh, this is for our bumper harness. I'm sitting there thinking, why is there an extra plug? Not thinking about the whole bumper wiring harness that goes back here. Ooh, we got some damage up front too. I didn't see that at the beginning. Got some wheel damage. We're gonna need to do suspension alignment. And cover up these connectors, which seems like it might be a little bit over the top, right? But what we're trying to prevent here is getting any contaminants in here, like dust, metal shavings, just overall dirt and junk that's flying around in a body shop. These things can get particles and all kinds of other fun stuff built up in there. And what we're trying to prevent here is if there is, let's say, metal shavings that get in that electrical connector, that can cause you some trouble when we plug it all back in, right? So we take that little extra step, and I know it's little, but to do that on all the cars we have disassembled, to make sure everything's gonna go back together the right way and function the right way. Just one of those really small steps that I don't think a lot of people think are a big deal and they just don't do, but it can mean a lot overall. How much fun would it be to have your car back for a month or two and you just keep having these random electrical demons and no one can figure out why, just to find out you've got some trash that was in a connector? And I'm sure the shop has probably tried to diagnose it 15 times and they couldn't figure it out, and the service center couldn't figure it out, and you couldn't figure it out. And lo and behold, it was just dirt and junk in an electrical connector that caused it to intermittently fail or cause you trouble. What a shame that would be.